So I want you to think about this headline here. This is from the CTV News. Anti-authority narratives could tear fabric of society, intelligence report warns. So at first, of course, I thought this was the RCMP report, right? So get that? Anti-authority narratives could tear fabric of society, intelligence report warns. So when you get into, and they don't supply a copy of this report, but threats against politicians have become increasingly normalized due to extremist. I'm going to just zoom in on this a bit here so I can.
We could do an access to information for $5.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I had to see if that would. So it says here that, and this is where I want to pay attention to some of these things that they say. So threats against politicians have become increasingly normalized due to extremist narratives prompted by personal grievances and fueled by misinformation or deliberate lies, warns a newly released intelligence report. The report, prepared by a federal task force that aims to safeguard elections, says the Canadian violent extremist landscape has seen the proliferation of conspiracy theories, a growing lack of trust in the integrity of the state, and more political polarization. No shit, Sherlock. Baseless theories, disinformation, and misinformation have spread to larger audiences, exposing online users to a vast network of narratives that undermine science, systems of government, and traditional figures of authority, the report says. Violent rhetoric routinely fixates on elected officials, with particular hostility towards high-profile women.
What?
So,
in Canada?
Yeah, I bet you would see
the only high-profile woman is Christina Freeland, and she's a retard.
There you go. So that's violent rhetoric right there from Darren. I mean, that's one of the you're probably on this list because your ex post where you told them that, you know, if they kept doing
right.
What?
That was Notley.
I know. This
might be about me.
So what was I gonna say? This probably corresponds. This, like, what they're saying here is this. It says that there's an increase. Does it say that? I want to be careful what I say here. It seems, I would say it correlates with the destruction of the mainstream media here. Anyways, the Canadian press used the access. Oh, so here they use this Access of Information Act to obtain. Who's the Canadian press? It's in capitals there. Like,
that's the company. Yeah.
Huh. To obtain the June 2023 report by the Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force. Some passages in the secret Canadian eyes only assessment were considered too sensitive to release. The federal body established
by who? By the government or by the Canadian press?
I don't know. The federal body established in 2019 to protect the electoral process from foreign interference includes representatives of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, so that would be CSIS, the RCMP, Global Affairs Canada, and the Communications Security Establishment, Canada's cyber spy agency. The report notes that while domestic terrorism threats are not strictly part of the task force focus on foreign meddling, we recognize the need to provide assessments on this issue. So don't forget, this is all about elections, right? Election meddling, foreign interference in elections, but they want to bring up the domestic terrorist aspect here. So they're talking about no one size fits all worldview for ideological extremism. Then it gets into, it says, while threats against politicians, so this is an important part here. It says, while threats against politicians peak during election cycles or major political announcements, RCMP information showed that monthly and annual averages had remained relatively stable since September 2021. Ideologically motivated violent extremists have increasingly normalized threats against prominent public figures outside the election cycle, the report concludes. So that seems a bit, I don't know, contradictory in a way. It seems kind of weird, right? I mean, do you remember the headline of this?
Yeah. All threats to the Prime Minister and other parliamentarians reported to the RCMP are triaged and assessed for a link to national security.
Yeah, of course, right? That makes sense. So here's an important
one. This in all different colors.
Well, this is because this is the deconstruction part. While extremist narrative, it's just for my own legibility. while extremist narratives and conspiracy theories do not usually manifest themselves as an act of serious violence, thank you, they have the potential to negatively affect the fabric of Canadian society, the report says. So that's where they got the headline from, right? So can we just take a second here to recognize that this it looks like to me this is where they got their headline from, and let's just compare the two. So they say, while extremist narratives and conspiracy theories do not usually manifest themselves as an act of violence, serious violence, they have the potential to negatively affect the fabric of Canadian society.
And what was the title?
I should have the title actually written there. Anti-authority narratives could tear the fabric of society, intelligence report warns. I don't know. I just thought, it's a little bit hyperbole, isn't it?
From negatively affect to tear. Yeah.
Well, and it just
could be it's like you got a little stain on it, or maybe it got a little wet.
No, but it says while they don't manifest themselves as violence, they have the potential to negatively affect. So
yeah, well, I don't think they didn't say violence. They said tear. So what they've really done is they've hyperbolized the potentially to negatively affect and turn that into tear, which would probably be like the worst effect on the fabric of society. Is like you could tear fabric. The only thing worse than tearing it is maybe burning it. So they've hyperbolized it to the worst case scenario from there. It's probably fine, Some people are a little spun up.
CSIS Director David Vigneault told a House of Commons committee this month the spy service, can you believe they're still calling it a spy service, is devoted about half of its counterterrorism resources to investigate the threat of ideologically motivated violent extremism. We've seen a number of the threat vectors increasing, he said. So now all of a sudden, now we've seen a number of threat vectors increasing. The task force report says anti-authority extremists have almost certainly leveraged social media posts about foreign interference in Canadian elections to reinforce pre-existing narratives around the inherent corruption of government institutions in Canada. So people are, they're taking these narratives of the foreign interference, like the China. What?
The inherent corruption. Not the apparent corruption, the inherent
reinforce. So this is CSIS saying they're reinforcing pre-existing narratives around the inherent corruption of the government institutions in Canada.
Inherent, existing in something as a permanent, essential, or characteristic attribute.
Yeah, and then the rest of this is just about.
So CSIS is just saying the government's corrupt and people are catching on.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Yeah.